Hello, friends. This is Chandrakant from Akulmach Technologies, and today we are going to meet a fantastic leader who joins us from UK. His name is Mike Bradley, and he is the Group Strategy Officer of RHF Group and ScaleUpArena. So, without further ado, let's meet Mr. Mike Bradley.
Hello, Chandra.
So, welcome to the Likeable Leaders, Mike, and our audience would like to know more about you. You are an accomplished leader with more than 2 decades of work experience. You've had many successes, many experiences along the way. So, why don't you share your story, how you became Mike Bradley, the Chief or a Group Strategy Officer or RHF at ScaleUpArena, as we see you today?
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for that, Chandra, and good to meet you again. And yes, my journey, I suppose, has come through the tech sector principally, and been in that for you're very generous with 2 decades. It's been a bit longer than that actually, but I don't normally admit it. And so yes, I was working for an IT manufacturer, which was an interesting position and role. I was on the tech side, on the technical side, so it was quite heavy technical at one stage. Then I was at a very young age training manager for UK and Ireland for the tech people within that business. So I was immediately interested in people, and I guess that's sort of been a underlying interest right the way throughout my career. I was also from an early stage involved in channel and developing businesses in conjunction with the company. And that again has been an underlying route. So through the course of time, I've been in running businesses for IT distribution companies, been in sales, of course, always wanting and looking forward to getting into general management. I like the intellectual challenge. I love an intellectual challenge, variety, adventure, international work, working with people around the globe. So yes, strategic and corporate development. So it naturally came to where we are now. Always been interested in people around the world, the international scene. Also always interested in current affairs, what makes people tick, and working with people.
Amazing story, Mike. I think you are a great leader and you have seen the transformation. And I really beg your pardon, basically, for saying 2 decades. In fact, it should be 3 decades. So, what is your observation and learning from the transition of industry over last 3 decades?
Well, I think obviously the last 3 decades has seen a massive change from traditional communication into digital communication. And I think that has probably been the largest change that we have seen. I was in the early stages selling email, which seems crazy now to think we actually had to tell people what this concept was at one stage. But then, of course, it moved on. We replaced, telex with fax. Then fax disappeared. Then we went into audio conferencing. This idea of talking around the globe on the telephone. Then we went into web sharing, and things like WebEx came on the scene, and the products that would enable us to communicate in real time across the globe, internally in organizations and then externally. And then there's things like digital exhibitions, webinars. Here we are talking across the globe online. That I think has been the biggest change. And for me, there's a tremendous amount of potential in communication. The more we communicate, there's always a downside, but the majority of us, we can gain so much by talking, interacting, supporting each other on a global basis. And that's been a massive positive change for the whole world.
So I see the ScaleUpArena behind you, the logo and the name of your company. So at this point, let's learn a little bit about what is ScaleUpArena, what type of activities your company is doing, And what is your spread?
Okay, well, ScaleUpArena is there to support growing companies that are seeking growth. And there's two classifications we're all familiar with. There's startups and there's scale-ups. Okay, so you've got the early stage, the ideas, then you've got a startup. And the startup is traditionally the person that goes to the bank, says, I'm starting a new business. They spend 2 hours having a chat with the bank manager, telling them all about what they're going to do. The bank manager says, sign this piece of paper, and then says, I'll send you a debit card in the post and come and talk to me in 2 years when you've got some money. And that's the startup we're all familiar with. Then there's the scale-ups, which has become more popular as a term, which is very rapid growth companies that are 3 years of 20% year-on-year growth with 10 people at the start of that counting period. Now, if you think about it, between startup and scale-up, there's probably a minimum of 3 years, possibly 4 or 5. And I term those emerge ups. That gap is emerging companies. They're not startups. They're faster than that. They started to get traction. But the challenge is there's a big gap with nobody addressing and supporting that marketplace. So I put together ScaleUpArena as the first ecosystem, community, online digital community, online ecosystem, as a way for those emerge up companies to reach that scaling place and scale ups, hopefully, where they can basically get the 5 pillars of growth, which historically have been siloized and people have categorized them. So all these companies need resources, they need funding, finance, they need partnering, M&A and joint ventures, which is of course my background, so I'm passionate about that. And part of the growth story, you can't have a growing company without having partnering and channels to market. Then the third area is you need to be able to showcase that product or that shop window, which is the sort of third pillar of ScaleUpArena, a place where you can put an elevator pitch, a multimedia pitch that enables the company to be seen and found rather than going into this needle in the haystack approach on Google. And then fourthly, there's the importance of things like tutoring, training, learning and development. We never stop learning. It's a lifelong journey, as you know. But in order to optimize opportunities, you need to be able to keep up to date, particularly in the tech space, where you've got products obsoleting every 6 months. So you've got to keep learning. And so within that pillar, we have things like multicast like this, podcasts, people that sharing their expertise, knowledge to support. And then finally, there's expert advisory or micro consulting, Micron as I call it, which enables those growing companies who need the skills of a multinational. They need a marketeer, they need a finance officer, they need a strategy officer, they need corporate support, tax incentives, but they actually maybe can't afford to have those people full time when they're emerging, but they could actually have them on a gig economy basis, a part-time basis, an iteration for a particular project, for a particular intervention, maybe weekly as opposed to every day. So those are the 5 pillars that ScaleUpArena provides on a global basis. You asked about scope. We have online meetings where we have people from around the world. We've got people from China, India, Africa, UK, America, though they don't join our virtual meetings because it tends to be in the morning and they're still sleeping. But we have interactions with those people around the globe, again, supporting that whole area that is vital for growth, which is the ability to, what I call it, connect, communicate, collaborate, cooperate, and then to close, because that's what it's all about.
So what it takes for the emerging companies to leverage the platform is basically a sign up or something else?
Well, they can become engaged in lots of ways, actually. They can become like a member of the ecosystem ScaleUpArena is a general one. We've just launched one called Insure Scale Up for the insurance space. We are also likely to be putting up another one soon for healthcare and life sciences. We've got geographic areas, so we're talking about doing one for India and one for the African region as well, 33 countries. ScaleUpArena will still be like the root of all of that. But they basically become a member. And when they become a member, we give them an induction program and an optimization guide. And it's a real givers get community. So, like everything in life, you've got to, what you put into it is what you'll get paid back on. And so it's all about collaborating and communicating together. Referring is a key part of it. We all know if we're trying to sell or buy something, a referral is worth a ton of advertising. So we encourage referrals right across the ecosystem. We encourage the members to have a listing for their company in the showcase, a expertise listing in the micro consulting expert area, and then also a vital, I think, is not just to provide information for learning and development and tutoring and training, but to actually use that as a soft sell, because a lot of us don't know what we don't know. So I recommend that they come up with an online briefing about their subject matter, because they're solving a problem. It's not that we have to sell, it's that people need to recognize they have a need. So we recommend they put up a briefing or a webinar. Maybe it's chargeable in some cases or free of charge, to say about their particular area, why it's so vital. And I think that's a real soft sell. So that's how they get engaged. Then we do all sorts of other stuff like social media, encourage them to put podcasts, video casts, exactly what we're doing now on specialist subjects to keep things alive. We're also building in now an ability to communicate as a member, create groups and communicate within those groups. We don't want to create noise, but we want to create focused conversations.
So I think the best way to describe is collaboration among the emerging companies, and put your strengths together to win something even bigger. So I think it's an amazing initiative, and the viewers who are listening can reach out to ScaleUpArena and register, take advantage of this. Moving on, you had so many successes in your career, long career. Would you like to share one of the biggest success you have had, and which is very close to your heart? How you accomplished it, what were the challenges you faced, and things like that.
Okay. Well, there's a few. I think strategic partnering with major corporates is the biggest challenge, because there's an awful lot that, I don't know if you're aware of the book, Chandra. There's Uncommon Sense and Common Nonsense.
I've heard about it, but I've not read it.
Yeah, it's an interesting book. And what it basically says is, let's say 80% of people follow the norm. Everybody thinks they've got to copy everybody else. But it's the 20%, the uncommon sense, that is the important thing. And the problem within a lot of corporates, I think, and particularly with partnering this is important, is they get into groupthink. They start to think that they've arrived. And so strategic partnering is always an interesting one. And I think one of the biggest successes I had was when I was launching in 2006, launching a relationship with a large networking integrator across Europe, part of France Telecom Group. And the challenge was how to overcome this bureaucratic approach to going to market in a major corporate where everybody's in a silo and you've got to get all the approvals to make things happen. Bearing in mind, in the tech space, products are going obsolete every 6 months. You don't have 12 months to make a plan. And the approach I ended up taking, I think, was I'll go ahead and do what I know I need to do, and I'll take the rap later if I get a challenge. And one of the successes there was one of the early successes was closing a major opportunity in Northern Europe, in the Benelux area. And of course, until we had this deal, it was like, oh, why should we? Why do we need to bother across Europe? There's loads of other products to sell, blah, blah, blah. But then when we closed this massive deal, all of a sudden, the market lit up. Everybody in the organization wanted us to come and pitch to them, get involved, sell something. And I think that was a really, that was a really great success. Another success for me was when I started doing work with India, set up a joint venture with a division of Tata. And so we had my employer, the American company, which was supplying the service for communication on the network of Tata. And so putting that together, it was for me, it was, at the time, it was a new geography. And I've been, of course, since 2008, been across to India a lot. Love the people, love the energy. That's why I think the living bridge is so interesting for us. Between the UK and India, we have so much to do together, and that went off very successfully. Enjoyed that, and as a result, that was not just a success, but opened up a whole new international area for me. And I guess another success was when I was chairing a business education charity, and it was all about helping 17, 18-year-olds to set up and run their own business in an academic year at school. And I restructured the local boards into a strategic and an operational board. And in the space of 4 years, we went from having 5 operating companies to 50. And I also ended up with and I was working with the top 100 companies in that particular geography. I tried to get the corporates involved. So I went to the CEOs, the FDs, and the HR directors. And I had a lot of corporates come to me. And one of the great successes for me was one day, one of those MDs was retiring. And he contacted me and he said, oh, I'm just about to retire, Mike. I'd like to do something to help this charity, business education charity. And so he said to me, what can I do? And he worked for, I won't mention the brand, but he worked for a company where at a particular time of year, he was asked to get tickets for Wimbledon tennis championships. And people would phone him up, say, oh, can you get me this? Can you get me this, Peter? And so I said, I tell you what, why don't you help me raise some funds? Because this is the opportunity to reverse the tables. So you can phone up all the people that you've been giving tickets to and say, how about some cash? So he then came on board and did that. He was our sponsorships director. And so, yeah, that was another big success.
It's so great to learn from leaders like yourself. And I feel that, I'm truly blessed that I have this job and I learn a lot from leaders like you. You are truly a global leader. You have so much experience and spread. You work with multiple types of companies spread across multiple countries. And so, therefore, you have so much experience. So from your experience, would you like to share where the industry is going in this decade, considering that your clientele and your partners are spread across the world?
Well, I think in the whole world is going digital. And even in traditional technology, digital is now playing a part. I had a brief spell of running a hydraulics company. And at the time, the CEO of the hydraulics company prided himself, this was only 15 years ago, prided himself on not using email. And a bit like the retail stores who haven't adopted online strategies, what's happening is those companies that are traditional, who do not adopt a digital strategy for going to market, for marketing, for growing, are going to struggle. So I think that's one of the big changes that's coming. And thankfully, I've always been at the leading edge of communication, always been in digital. And that's partly where ScaleUpArena is coming from. We're also putting together rebirthing, actually, for SME IT opportunity, which is to help the 80% of companies who reside on the industrial estates of the world who don't touch tech, to optimize that in an efficient and effective way. I think that's the second, so the first one is digital is going everywhere. Second one is traditional technology is going to have to adopt digital. And the third one is, of course, everything is going much faster. If you don't optimize your opportunities in 3 years within the tech market, you deliver or die. So the pace of change is much quicker, and we can only optimize the opportunities if we use partnering approaches, joint ventures, M&A, cute and smarter routes to market. So that's, I think those are the major changes.
And I think while going through your website, I learned about the investor help also you're giving to the emerging companies. Would you like to talk about that? How the investor community is going to shape up our future?
Yeah, well, I think obviously, again, taking all the other things into perspective, what happens is that typically a company forms around a technology or a product. And somebody will think, oh, I've got just a solution. I've seen this problem and I can create a product for it. And one of the most important things is to realize that actually it's great having a product, but you've got to find a market. And you've got to address the needs of that market by solving a problem. And that, I think, is probably the area that investors are looking for most, is how do they offset their risk? They're putting their money in, but their risk is reduced massively if they can see traction and go to market. There's every day we see great ideas coming in through the different ecosystems. The only snag is a lot of them say, oh, we're pre-revenue, but we want $500,000. Well, if it was your own money, how would you feel about it? And so I think when companies are approaching investors, they have to think, if this was my money, would I want to invest it? And so the key to that is have a good exec summary. They don't want War and Peace. They don't want 100 pages. They don't have time for 100 pages. What they want to know is that the money's safe. They got a good team. They've got a good proposition. They started to maybe get some traction. Don't start with trying to boil the ocean. If you can't get your local easy connected people to join, how the heck are you going to boil the ocean? So you've got to prove the model in a small way, and then you'll develop. That's what I see happening. And of course, access to funding through global platforms like ScaleUpArena is going to become easier, but the basics are still the same. People are putting their money on to a proposition, and they want to know that they're going to, at least it's going to be safe, and ideally it's going to grow at a sensible rate.
Do you also see growth in more events around the crowdsourcing? Because the rule of the engagement will remain the same. You need to give the comfort feeling to the investors. But do you see crowdsourcing, crowdfunding playing a major role as we go along?
I think it has its place, and it also depends on the objectives of the founders. There's certainly, if you can build up a tribe, as it were, if you can build up a follower base, warm prospects, customers, they are potentially the ones that you can go for. B2C, I think it's much more popular than a B2B environment. That's not to say you can't do it in B2B, but I think there are more efficient ways to raise business funding. If you've got a consumer product, people will, if they're interested, they might go to your site, or you may be able to get profile and traction through Instagram or Facebook, etc. And then you might be able to draw the crowd to help make an investment. But I definitely think it's got a place, but it's more of a place for me in a B2C space than a B2B space.
So thank you very much for giving us all this information and sharing your mantra of success. What is your last message to the budding entrepreneurs who are watching this video?
I think there are three things. One is never give up. Okay, just don't be put off by the naysayers, because there'll always be people who say you can't do it. But you have to have a degree of pragmatism. There might be a time when you have to say we're going to stop. But I think it was in a film where it said, if things aren't yet all right, it's not yet the end. Yeah. And so that's another one. And I do believe, if in doubt, go for it, because you only live once. So if you don't try and achieve your dreams, you're guaranteed you're not going to achieve them.
I think this is a very powerful message, Mike, and I really appreciate coming to this show with you and discussing things about what you have done globally. It was lovely talking to you, Mike.
And you, Chandra, thank you very much for the interview. I've really enjoyed it. And have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.